Welcome to Heart with Nicole and David, featuring your hosts, Nicole Vickery and David Franco. Our program is designed to empower the adult congenital heart defect community with information of importance to the growing population of heart warriors. Nicole and David, both heart warriors, will be meeting with people from around the world to share information, gain knowledge, and draw hope from their experiences. And now, here are Nicole and David.
Welcome to the first episode of Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. I am Nicole and David's producer, Anna Jaworski. It is my pleasure to introduce Nicole and David to all of you in this episode. Starting next month, I'll be out of earshot producing the show, but for today, Nicole and David have invited me to interview them. Our theme this season is You Are Not Alone, and we have a great show for you today. Today's show is A New Beginning, and our guests are Nicole Vickery and David Franco. Nicole Vickery was born in 1970 with Tetralogy of Follow. She was extremely cyanotic, or blue, and had her first pediatric cardiology appointment at 7 days of age in Birmingham, Alabama. Nicole attended the University of South Alabama, majoring in business finance with a minor in public relations. Currently, Nicole resides in Huntsville, Alabama, where she devotes herself to congenital heart defect education through public speaking engagements, film production, the use of social media, and her charity, Silent Cries Productions. Most importantly, she spends time with her daughter, who was adopted from China in 1996. Nicole's second daughter was adopted from India in 2000, but sadly she passed away at 13 months from complications due to being born with cerebral palsy. Nicole is currently the president and executive director of Silent Cries Productions, producer and executive producer of Collisions, Rocking the Scars, a Silent Cries production, Wolf Entertainment Productions, and A Million Visions Productions. She now adds podcast co-hosts to her ever-growing resume. Prior to joining Philip Wolf at Silent Cries, Nicole spent years in the nonprofit sector, frequently as a board member. While Nicole had a great deal of education and real-life training, which helps roles as producer and nonprofit president, perhaps what makes her the best person for the job as a podcast host is that she is a CHD warrior. Nicole has been a guest several times on Heart to Heart with Anna. So welcome to Heart with Nicole and David. Nicole?
Thank you for agreeing to wear two hats today as producer and interviewer. We're glad that you're here.
Oh, this is so exciting for me, Nicole. I am just beyond excited, and I really appreciate you letting me interview you and introduce you to the world as a new co-host of your own podcast.
We are excited to launch this, and hopefully this adult CHD community will benefit from it just as much as we have already and continue to.
Well, let's start by talking about why you decided to be the co-host of a podcast, Nicole.
My foray into the podcast world was my first appearance on your show. Since then, I have really gotten into the medium. When you mentioned podcasts for adult CHDers, I thought a podcast fits perfectly in my CHD advocacy wheelhouse. A forum to educate people who do not know the number one birth defect, help young adult CHD patients, and learn from those well beyond my years. And the internet couldn't be a better place to do it.
Oh, I totally agree with you. What I love about podcasting is that you can listen to this when it's convenient for you. My friends overseas can listen to it when it's convenient for them. I have friends who listen to the shows while they're exercising. And because we don't have to do this live and they can be archived, it can be convenient for anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. That's why I thought it was brilliant.
Well, when we talked about you having your own show, one of the first things you said to me was, yes, we have to get David Franco to co-host with me. So can you tell our listeners what your connection is with David?
David and I met on Facebook. He probably remembers the post better than I. My social media has a half-life of a nanosecond at best. However, we got to talking about what time each of us had been operated on by John Kirkland Sr., for whom the Kirkland Clinic at UAB is named, and that's the University of Alabama, Birmingham. I think he's about 3.5 years older than me, And so from the dates that his mother gave him, we did the math and realized we were likely there at the same time when he was in for his VSD patches. I was either there for my Waterston shunt or one of my many bouts of pneumonia. So we probably played in the nursery together. When you broached the subject of an ACHD podcast, at that point, David and I had spoken several times about fragmentation in the ACHD community or the CHD community at large, and some of our mutual goals in advocating for our cause and needing to be more active and participatory. Mm-hmm. Actually, I felt an instant connection with David, like he was my big brother, like I'd known him my whole life. So we seem to, we communicate well. And we just spent a weekend filming with Silent Cries Productions. He has really stepped up and helped us out there on collisions. And I realized this is the first time we're really spending any time together. He had come and seen me speak at an Amazing Little Hearts event in Dallas, but we really didn't spend a lot of time aside from a meal or two. But I thought, I have this instant connection with this person. We don't have the same CHDs in the same age group, and we have similar goals and objectives. And I couldn't think of anybody better to have as a co-host. That's why I immediately say, yes, we have to have Dave. And he's the only person that came to mind. He was immediately, that's what I wanted.
I think that's just so awesome. I've loved having both of you on the show. But I'm curious, what motivated you to come on my podcast to begin with?
I think it was because you asked me. I'm not used to being invited to do things, used to having to do my own self-promotion and, hey, you want me to speak at your walk, that kind of thing. I had done a couple of radio spots for Collisions back when it was just a documentary. So you asked me and I said, sure, I'll try it once. Figured you wouldn't ask again. Because
little did you know.
I know. And then you had me on another time last season. And I'm like, well, I couldn't have done too poorly. She's asking me again. And now you've asked me to co-host. So I think that's why I wanted to come on a podcast for the CHD community.
Well, you did an excellent job, and it's been so much fun working with you, and I can't wait to see what 2017 is going to do for us. I have a feeling we're going to be really great friends by the end of the year, and I already feel like we're close friends. I was so happy that you came to Texas, and I was able to meet you in person. That was really awesome.
Oh, it really was.
Okay, so let's get back to your congenital heart defects. We know that you were born with Tetralogy of Follow, but I know that some of our listeners may not be familiar with that exact heart defect because there are so many different ones out there. So can you tell us what Tetralogy of Follow means and how it has affected your life? Tetralogy
is, I think, the French word for four.
Mm-hmm.
Follow was the doctor, the physician who diagnosed the anomaly. And you have four defects of the heart. You have a ventricular septal defect, which is a wall or a hole in the wall of the septum, an atrial septum defect, that is yet another hole. And then I think it's pulmonary stenosis, which is a narrowing of the pulmonary artery. You can either have coarctation, I can never say the word right, of the aorta, or an overriding aorta, which I had, the overriding aorta. I also think there's a terminology, Tetralogy of Follow, where you have five things wrong. And I drew that lucky straw because I also had pulmonary valve stenosis, which I still suffer from today. And I still have one branch pulmonary artery that is about half a normal size. So my lung function is equivalent to having one lung and a half as opposed to two full lungs. The effects on my life, I just had to work harder I always wanted to keep up with my friends. So, and I never want anybody to know that I was different. And fortunately, my parents didn't treat me differently. So they let me play softball. I marched in the band, carried the next to largest instrument you could, a euphonium. And people who have heard us talk before, they know that, I did that and sang in a choir, even went to school my first year of college on a voice scholarship. It just meant a lot of extra work on my part. I guess I can't imagine my life not being a heart patient. I really can't. I think about people trying to hide their scars. I never did that. It was kind of a non-issue for me. And that's one thing that I want to empower, especially girls and women. Ignore it. Nobody else is paying attention to your chest scar. It's your lifeline. I'd like to empower the entire community to reach beyond what they think their physical limitations are, because it can be done.
I love that. I love how you said your scar is your lifeline. That's really powerful. Yeah, I love it. That's amazing that you've been able to just embrace your heart defect as part of who you are. And that's one of the things I've admired about my son and so many other adults with congenital heart defects that I know. You survivors are tough. And your scar is just part of who you are. Some of you, like my son and many other people I know, they've had their chest sawed open multiple times where that scar is. So it's nice and thick. It's not going anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Mine's ugly. I don't wear a bikini. And yeah, because I was born in 1970, I have the one that goes around the chest and down the chest, and where they had external wires way back when. Couldn't be uglier. I've had people ask me, why don't you have that cosmetically fixed? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I fought to get this, man. I'm keeping it. I'm not going to go in and have surgery to have my surgical scars removed. I'm alive because of them. And so I don't want to be ashamed ever of them.
So I saw this meme on the internet, and it was something like, who needs tattoos when you have the scars to identify what is really important in your life? It was something like that. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful, because a lot of people do get tattoos just as a statement, this is who I am. But that person was so right. With the scars that you all have, that makes a much bolder statement than any tattoo ever could. At least in my opinion.
I think so too.
Yeah.
They are my tattoos. Midlife, I don't have to worry about getting a tattoo. I got plenty.
Well, Nicole, there was very little information available about congenital heart defects or about CHDs in the 1970s. So I'm really curious what life was like for your parents raising you way back then, and what kind of resources did they have?
Oh, they had no resources. I didn't even learn about different congenital heart groups until 2007, when I had my last open heart surgery. They certainly didn't have anything like you came along in 1999 and you put up the most extensive website I've ever seen on it, on CHDs. They had God, they had prayer, they had themselves, each other that they relied upon, which of course I'm not minimizing that whatsoever. It was their faith that held them together. It was their faith that, when the doctor said, let her be a kid, let her live her life, they let me. They didn't hold me back. I don't want to badmouth any particular organizations, but financially, when they were trying to pay for my surgical interventions, the one that you would expect to help them did not, sent them to another one. Really, the March of Dimes, I have to give a special plug to, because they were there for my parents many times. And otherwise, I don't know how they would have paid for everything. Healthcare was so different than it is now. Not that it's great now, but it was just different. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew anything beyond Dr. Blaylock, what his team had done. We really had not made any advances. And so I've seen more advances in the last decade than I have in the last 46 years.
Yeah.
So, like I said, they really had just each other and their faith in God. They had their church family, but they didn't have anybody who could personally relate, who had a child that had their chest cut open many times and in the hospital with pneumonia. They just had a kid who was sick a lot, and people tried to bring toys and pretend like they understand.
Yep.
That was about the best they could do. But they made it, and I'm sure their marriage was stronger for it.
Yeah, I think that something like this either makes or breaks a marriage. At least that's been my experience. And we were lucky, for my husband and myself. We've just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. And
congratulations.
Well, thank you. So I think that for us, our faith definitely helped us, and just being there for each other like your parents were for each other. Because way back when, even though Alex is only 22, there still wasn't very much available. So
yeah. doctors were still mentoring under other pediatric cardiology. I mean, pediatric cardiology wasn't really a discipline in medical school until the 90s.
Yeah.
And then you had to get pediatric cardiologists to learn what we adults look like after we've aged and had scar tissue and our hearts are looking funky. We've come a long way, baby, as they say.
We have, and that's the perfect place for us to take a little break. But don't leave yet, listeners, because when we come back, we're going to meet Nicole's partner in crime, David Franco. We'll be back after this short break.
The most common themes that I hear is why.
She always needed a lot of attention. She had strokes.
Even though it's a natural inclination to withdraw from the CHD community, I think being a part of it helped me be part of the solution.
Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us every Thursday at noon Eastern. I'm Michael Lieben, and I'll be your host as we talk with people from around the world who have experienced those most difficult moments.
Hi, I'm John Montez of NBC's hit a cappella show, The Sing-Off. In a cappella music, it takes a team to create a sound that many will enjoy, just like it'll take a team to help my good friend Miles Schweitzer, an HLHS survivor. Let's help Miles fulfill his dream and make a big enough sound to bring awareness to congenital heart disease. Please visit him at gofundme.com/The Miles Project. Miles with the Y. Again, that's gofundme.com/The Miles Project. This is from Miles.
You are listening to Heart with Nicole and David. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Nicole or David at hearttoheartwithnicoleanddavid.com. Now, back to Heart with Nicole and David.
Welcome back to the inaugural season of our new show, Heart to Heart with Nicole and David, a show for the adult congenital heart defect community. Today's show is a new beginning, and our guests are also our co-hosts, Nicole Vickery and David Franco. We just finished talking with Nicole about how she was born with a CHD and how she has been helping the CHD community, and now how she's going to be co-hosting her own podcast. But now it's time to meet her partner in crime, David Franco. David Franco is 50 years old and was born with a ventricular septal defect, or VSD, pulmonary stenosis, and congenitally corrected transposition of the great arteries, or l-tga, also known as CCTGA. He was born at home in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, and his mom was taken to the hospital by ambulance and was released after being given the all-clear. David showed no signs of having any heart problems. 6 weeks later, his family's pediatrician heard a strange sound in his chest, and he was referred to a specialist. A heart catheterization showed his heart anomaly. David's parents were given very few options, but by the age of 5, they chose to take David to the University of Alabama, Birmingham. David had his VSD closed by Dr. John Kirkland at 5 years of age. He also received an implanted pacemaker. David had a second open heart surgery at 27 to replace his pulmonary valve and add a pulmonary conduit, allowing for more oxygenated blood going through his body. The surgery was successful, but David suffered a stroke during this procedure. He also received an implanted cardioverter defibrillator, or ICD. David married Pamela Putnam on August 13, 1993, and they have one heart-healthy daughter who is currently attending college in Texas. David and his lovely wife currently reside in Austin, Texas. Welcome to Heart with Nicole and David, David.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to be the interviewer for your debut episode of your podcast, David.
You know, I have to say thank you for volunteering your time. This is a great way, really, to kick off our new beginning.
I think so, too. So let's talk about why you decided to become the co-host of a podcast, David.
It wasn't the easiest decision to make. I'm new to this. I've never done a podcast. I've been a guest. But I did realize that I had an opportunity, though, to speak for the adult congenital heart community, and I could use this form of communication. This is relatively new to me, so it's a great way to get out there. As you mentioned before in the previous segment, these are archived shows, so people can actually listen to them, as you said, when they're exercising in their car, wherever they're free, when they have some free time. What I must add is that I really did it for a selfish reason. that is the joy I feel from when I communicate a voice for the adult congenital heart community, which really isn't loud enough. And I get to meet people this year. I get to interview them, and hopefully I'll make a lot of new friends.
Oh, I'm so sure that you will, David. I'm excited for segment 3, where we're going to actually talk about some of the shows that we've brainstormed we want to do and some of the guests that we're hoping will be coming on the show. You are going to meet some of the most outstanding people. I can't believe I've already completed 8 seasons of Heart to Heart with Anna, and I feel like I know so many more people now, and I do believe they're friends. By the time you finish interviewing somebody and you've gone back and forth writing to that person and getting to know them, you feel this really strong connection, and I know that it's not selfish at all for you to want to do this. You're giving a lot of time and energy, and you're going to be fabulous with Nicole. I can't wait to see what the two of you produce. I think it's going to be outstanding. But I think you're so right when you say that the voices that are talking about adults with CHD are not loud enough. And I'm really excited that you and Nicole have this opportunity as adult survivors to give more voices who are adult survivors a platform for which to talk about all these topics that are so important to you. I think we're finding more and more topics that we need to address. Don't you think, David?
I agree. As we get older, new things will pop up. And of course, they find new and new ways to fix certain problems. Of course, we have no cure for our congenital heart defects. However, they're fixing them, and they're fixing them earlier in a child's life. So the advances are amazing. And I see them over the 50 years I've been involved in this. I cannot imagine I'm still here and that I started the way I did.
Yeah, it's truly a miracle. And for you to be 5 years old before you had your first surgery, I just think it's a miracle. And I think God has a special plan for you, David, but that's the way that I see life.
No, it all works out. I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. So when I talked to Nicole about hosting a podcast, she immediately said she wanted you to be her co-host. What was the first thing that went through your mind when we told you that we wanted the two of you to host a show together?
Really? You wanted to? Okay. At first, I thought y'all were crazy. And, no. I was nervous at first, but then I realized that I knew Nicole, and we were actually friends through social media for a while. I met her in person, and we actually worked together. And I really think that looking back on my decision, her confidence in me gave me the confidence and doing my role as a co-host. So I really have to appreciate that Nicole was thinking of me, and it really boosted not just my enthusiasm and confidence, but actually my motivation. It's just certainly, I have now a teammate that is as passionate about the subject of congenital heart disease as anyone else is, and I'm glad to be involved.
Oh, I just love that. And I knew you guys were going to be such an awesome team. I loved having both of you on the show. And you guys were not on the same show. You've been on different shows. But what motivated you to come on my podcast to begin with, David?
Nicole said it best. It was, you asked and I said yes. I enjoyed sharing my experience with others. And when we share experiences, I tend to notice that we have similarities, and I see the differences that we have. And it really brings us closer together, because my realization of, wow, this person is going through this and I haven't yet, or I may not ever. But to be able to experience it through someone else is really what drew me closer to coming to where I am right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, you and Nicole have very different heart defects, and there are a lot of people who will be listening to the show who don't really understand what congenitally corrected transposition means. And they may think, well, wait a minute, if it's corrected, then there's no problem, right? Why don't you go ahead and set the record straight for us, David?
Well, I'm not a doctor, and that kind of helps me explain this in layman's terms. I refer to it as l-tga also. It is known as cc-tga. Fairly easy to explain. Let me give you an example. When I visit my EP, he takes care of my ICD. His chart will say transposition / ventricular inversion. My defect is really simple. I have 4 chambers to my heart that are complete, and besides some screwy turns in the plumbing, I have really inverted ventricles. And that's really not the way you should be. You should have the left ventricle, which most people have, pumping systemically. That means pumping to the body. It pumps the good oxygenated blood to the body. And then the right ventricle receives that blood and sends it to the lungs. I have it reversed. And in my case, my right ventricle, which was not built to pump systemically, is doing the work. And my left ventricle is kind of taking it easy as a muscular chamber. They're not built for the same job. So that is my biggest thing, getting the blood to my body. Now, along with that ventricular inversion, many people have VSDs, the ventricular septal defect, which is the hole in between the 2 chambers in the bottom of the heart. And I did have that repaired when I was 5 years old. And I also have pulmonary stenosis, and I believe it's from the left ventricle pumping to the lungs instead of my right ventricle, and it's just pumping at such a high pressure, my pulmonary artery has been affected. So, in short, there's really no common connection between everyone's defects, just because even 2 l-tgas or 2 TOFs or 2 of any of heart defects, even those 2 can be as different as night and day. So my defect is as simple as I explained, and that's the best way I could tell it.
You just explained that so well. But that for those people who don't know much about heart anatomy, what David said is so true. One of the reasons why it's so difficult to clone a heart is because, first of all, there are those 4 valves that we have in our heart. But in addition to that, the left and right ventricles were designed for different purposes. And because the right ventricle usually only does pump blood to the lungs, which are relatively close to the heart, it doesn't have to work very hard. The left ventricle actually looks different. It's more muscular than the right ventricle. And it has to be more muscular because it's supposed to pump that blood throughout the entire body. So when there is that inversion or that change in those responsibilities for pumping the blood to the lungs and to the body are switched, the poor heart is completely baffled because it doesn't have the same musculature to do what it's supposed to do. So I think the way that you explained it is very good, and hopefully people who are listening to this show who are just being introduced to what congenital heart defects are maybe now have a little bit better understanding. But you're so right. Even if your child or you yourself have one of these diagnoses, your heart will probably look a little bit different, and you might have some other things that are wrong with it that are different. So always make sure you check with your doctor and have them explain to you. It sounds like your doctor has done a really good job, David, at explaining to you what your defects are and why your heart has some of the troubles that it does because of the funky anatomy.
I've done some training for doctors myself. I've told them if I had a nickel,
I love that.
If I had a nickel for every fellow or every student who came in and wanted to listen to a defective heart, I'd be a rich person. I would have, in fact, I would have not had to pay any of the insurance money and put the doctor through college anyway, because no, we were guinea pigs, and They did not at the time. And I use that word affectionately because it's true. We are actually the generation that they worked on. I mean, I remember they were able to do certain things in the hospital back in the day when it would be totally forbidden nowadays. And that would go from smoking in the hospital to procedures that are done. Again, as I said, I'm not a doctor, but having been in the hospital for a large part of my life.
Well, I totally understand what you're talking about. My son was born in the 1990s, and he was diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So he's among some of the first long-term survivors with that congenital heart defect. And he, just like you, and just like Nicole, I'm sure, had so many fellows and residents and just about anybody else who had never heard a heart that was diagnosed with HLHS beating. They would bring people in listen to Alex so they could see, or they would be showing them the echocardiogram or, some of the different tests, the EKG, because it does look different. But thank goodness you guys were willing to train these up-and-coming doctors. And this is why now, this is unbelievable to me, but we have a specialization for doctors who work with adults with congenital heart defects. Isn't that just awesome, David?
That is incredible. I never thought I'd see that in my life. I just turned 50. I'm so blessed. I've seen so much change, and I really do anticipate more change. I think we just need to get a little bit more word out there and start the process rolling, because change is going to happen. It's inevitable. However, we need to be louder voice at this point, just because we are the number one birth defect of all.
Well, and you're a growing population. Because we have so many survivors now, you adults are setting all kinds of records, and you're making new problems for these doctors, David. You and Nicole and Alex and so many other wonderful people out there are living long enough to introduce all new problems to these doctors. So yes, things are continually growing and changing. And I'm really excited because on my show this week, I talked about stem cell research. And I think that's one of the new up-and-coming therapy treatments that is going to revolutionize and change the whole pediatric cardiology field as a discipline. I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in Heart to Heart with Nicole and David too. But
I bet.
Let's take a leap back into the past and talk about how you and Nicole maybe played together when you were children at the University of Alabama. Can you tell me how it is that the two of you met with social media and what that means for you as far as connecting with others in the CHD community?
I know we met on Facebook, and we were both commenting about doctors. This was almost in the first stages of Facebook when people opened up about their CHD, and I saw a number of CHD groups grow. And then it was inevitable. It was going to happen that somewhere we met and doctors crossed. I mean, because there are so many of us out there. Again, it had to happen. So I'll start with when I joined social media with CHD, and I really wasn't looking for CHD people. I had a stroke, and I still suffered the effects of it. Not as many as, of course, I did over 20 years ago, but I was initially looking for people who've had strokes and how they get through it, etc. When I saw so many of these CHD groups growing, I found family to join me. I mean, they are family. Specific groups in CHD, for example, we have exercise groups, we have dieting groups. There are so many different aspects to how we need to take care of ourselves. And of course, as we say, we're not doctors, but we share our experiences and what really works with us. So it's a great outlet. Social media is such a great outlet for me to get my story told and to listen to other people speak.
I think so too. And that's what I love about this podcast and how you and Nicole are going to be hosting this podcast yourselves without me. I'll be in the background in just a short period of time. So thanks for sharing that information with us, David. Now we need to take a quick break, but don't leave yet, listeners, because coming up next, we'll have Nicole and David in the studio together, and we'll be talking about what plans we have for season 1 of their show. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Unaware that over 30 types of congenital heart defects exist, CHDs are the leading cause of neonatal and infant death in America. Many children are born with multiple heart defects, and families need help in creating more awareness to catch and cure CHDs. Do your part to bring awareness and research. Many CHDs may not be detected until later in adult life.
Anna Jaworski has spoken around the world at congenital heart defect events, and she is available as a keynote or guest speaker for your event. Go to hearttoheartwithanna.com to learn more about booking Anna for your event. You can also find out more about the radio program, keep up to date with CHD resources and information about advocacy groups, as well as read Anna's weekly blog. Anna wants you to stay well connected and participate in the CHD community. Visit hearttoheartwithanna.com today.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on our program, please send an email to Nicole at hearttoheartwithnicoleanddavid.com. Now, back to Heart with Nicole and David.
Welcome back to our show, Heart to Heart with Nicole and David, a show for the adult congenital heart defect community. Today's show is A New Beginning, and our guests are Nicole Vickery and David Franco, who just happen to also be the co-hosts for the program. We just finished talking with David Franco about how he has become the host of this podcast. And so now I want to welcome both of them into the studio. So welcome to Nicole and David. We're all in the studio at the same time together right now. So hi, Nicole.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, David.
Hi, Anna.
Okay, so we're all together, and I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask both of you. First of all, Nicole, can you tell us how people can be a guest on your show?
Anyone who is a member of the adult congenital heart defect community can be a guest on our show. They just need to get with one of the three of us, tell us their story. We have a form that they can fill out, and they send us a bio, and we write the script and run with it from there. We will have a list of topics set up so that if someone finds one, they say, hey, I know all about that, or I relate to that one, or I have a story for that, then we want you to come and share it with us, please, because that's what we're here for. We're not here to talk about Nicole and David. We really have done that to death. We are trying to hear your stories so that everyone can feel part of the community and not alone in the world.
Right. And what I love is that Nicole is really, really connected. You can find her on Facebook. You can find her on Twitter. She's out there in a lot of different places, and it's easy to find her. David, I know that you're on Facebook. Are you also on Twitter?
Yes, I'm on Twitter.
Okay. So great. And then Anna Jaworski, I am also on Facebook and Twitter. And you can also find us on the Heart to Heart with Nicole and David Facebook page. So there's lots of different ways that you can connect with us. So David, can you please tell your listeners what kind of guests you're actually looking for?
Well, since our show focuses on adults with CHD, we're looking for guests who can actually add to our topics, if professionals, other CHDers, anybody out there who can really help us explain what we're going through. Even people who want to share some stories are possible guests. We're looking to focus on CHD awareness for adults, our lives that we've been through.
Right. I love that. And we will be posting suggestions for the topics. Sometimes, in my experience with Heart to Heart with Anna, I will have people contact me and say, I really want to come on your show and talk about, and it'll be a topic I've never even thought about before. So if you see a list of topics and we don't have the topic that a particular guest is interested in talking about, go ahead and talk to Nicole or David or me about it. And who knows, maybe we'll make an adjustment to our schedule and we'll have you on the show instead. Right, David and Nicole?
Absolutely.
That would be great.
So, Nicole, can you talk to our guests about the length of your program? Because as anyone can tell who's listening so far, it's not just a 30-minute show like we have with Heart to Heart with Anna.
No, it's not. Anna keeps hers to a really tight 30-minute program, which is perfect for new mommies that want to grab 30 minutes for themselves to exercise and listen to her broadcast. But given that we are adults ranging anywhere from 18 to however old, we thought that we would do a 45-minute to a 1-hour program. That would allow us to have multiple interviews, multiple guests in one show. Then David and I would be able to come back in the studio at the end with our guest and wrap and discuss what we've learned and talked about that show.
Yes, exactly. I love that. So we also have one other little thing that we're doing that's different with Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. So Nicole, do you want to tell them the other little tweak that we have to your program?
Okay, so the difference with Heart to Heart with Nicole and David, we have a new show airing each month, the first Wednesday of every month. However, that same show will be re-aired every week of that month. For example, this show will be every Wednesday for the month of January. It affords everyone the opportunity to listen to our show in their own time. They have a whole month to listen to it. But then if you can block out some time on that Wednesday from 1 to 2, then you can come hang out with us and get to know us better and let us get to know you, because you are the people that we want to serve, and we can't serve you if we don't know you and know your needs and wants.
I love it. I love it. And this is something brand new. We're doing this with Nicole and David, and I'm also doing it with another podcast that's starting out in 2017, and that's Heart to Heart with Michael. He's doing the same thing, only his show is for the bereavement community, and his is a little 30-minute show like what mine is, Heart to Heart with Anna. We're all meeting in Pal Talk in the Hug podcast chat room, and you can find directions on how to do this at www.hearttoheartwithanna.com on my blog. I explain exactly what you need to do so we can get to know you a little better. And I love how you're doing this, Nicole, because I do think that there's a lot of value to people being able to talk about your show with you, because they may have some questions over what they've heard. And the reason I love that you're doing the same show each week for that month is in case people are out on vacation and they miss it for the first week or 2 weeks, they can still come in and be part of that conversation. They haven't missed the boat. They still have a chance to talk with you about it.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to do, is open a dialogue, have a conversation about what it's like to be the first generation heart, as most people say, survivors, congenital heart survivors. And how can we improve? How can David and I do a better job of serving the community? And what do you want to hear from us? Because we don't want this to be just a one-year season. We want to keep going and build it and grow it. And it's for you.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've been trying it out with my live shows over the Christmas holiday. It's tough because people are so busy during the Christmas holiday, but we've had a couple people come into the Hug podcast chat room on Pal Talk, and we've had a lot of fun. I know this will be a great way for us to get to know all of you and for you to get a chance to get to know us better too. So, David, I'm going to address this next question to you.
Okay.
Can you tell us about some of the different roles that you and Nicole are playing in the podcast aside from being co-hosts?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying, even if you're not new to podcasting, it takes a lot of work to produce a podcast. So Nicole and I decided going into this that we would split the work equally. She's going to do most of the promotional work, the upfront work, the script writing, and I'm doing more of the behind-the-scenes work, the editing, with the two of us working together and picking up slack where needed. This is the perfect plan for us as of now. This may change, but we really wanted to split the job in half, and we actually work to our advantages. She's a very well-spoken person, and she's a great writer. And I have a little bit of a background in music. I know how to do some editing. In fact, I'm surprised at some of the editing tools I have now that I haven't touched in 20-some-odd years. What took me 4 processes would take me just one click of a mouse to do some editing on certain things. I don't want to make it sound like I have the easier job. That's the way it's going to work for now.
Well, and you're so modest. You have a lot of experience with music, and editing is not easy, and it's not intuitive. Trust me on this, folks. It is not intuitive, but David is technologically advanced enough to understand what mouse clicks need to happen in order to make the podcast sound good, and I'm really excited that I get to work with this team. I think this is a really all-star team, and everybody's going to benefit because of everybody pulling part of the load. It makes it easier, and it makes it possible for me to produce 3 programs. It's kind of scary for me to be in that position, but by having such great teams as the Heart to Heart with Michael team and the Heart to Heart with Nicole and David team, we can do this, and we can be that voice for the congenital heart defect community. So I want to thank you guys again for saying that you would do this. It's really so exciting for me.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure Nicole feels the same way.
Oh, I do. I'm still in shock that you asked me and then asked me who to pick. But I don't think that I could find anybody that I work better with. I'm crazy about David, and we get along great. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, not just for our listeners, but for us as well.
I do too. And I have one last question. I can't believe that our first show is almost done already, but I have one last question, and it's for both of you. And I'll start with Nicole. And that is, what do you hope to accomplish by hosting this podcast, Nicole?
So many things that I'd like to accomplish. We want to advocate for the adult community, the adult congenital heart community. We want to educate people I always say the worst time to learn about the number one birth defect is when you're celebrating the birth of your first, second, or 10th child. It's just, that's not when you want to learn what is possible. To be able to have a platform to educate and advocate for primarily adults, I think we can be a benefit to the entire community at large, even people who are yet to expect a child. We have some teasers for you coming up in February. Our first Wednesday for February is Heart Month. Our good friend, Lena Morsch, who is an Adult Congenital Heart Association ambassador, has an exciting announcement about her latest CHD project. And you'll have to tune in to hear her news. I'm not telling you any more, but you will learn more about her life as a TGA patient, but very different than the TGA transposition of the greater arteries that my co-host David has. And you can learn more about her CHD advocacy efforts as well.
David.
Raise awareness, to share our stories. I'm going to repeat everything that Nicole just said. So that's really what I want to get out of this show. I took this opportunity because I want to raise awareness. We need to go further than that. We have to start with little steps. I have info on our March episode, which comes right when we all start drifting from those New Year's resolutions, and you will not want to miss this show. We delve into nutrition, weight loss, and exercise for the adult congenital heart patient. We have a great year planned. We look forward to sharing some of our topics with you, and we hope you can share them with us. We want them to be important to the CHD warrior, and mark your calendars for the first Wednesday of each month, noon Eastern Time.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you on your debut episode, Nicole and David. This has been so much fun.
Oh, well, thank you for doing it. I've had a great time.
Thank you very much for having us.
Well, this has been a great show, but that does conclude this episode of Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. Thanks for listening today. Please come back next week on Wednesday at noon Eastern Time to interact with us via the HUG podcast chat room on Pal Talk. Until then, please contact David or Nicole or me, Anna Jaworski, if you would like to be on the show.
Just remember, until that fateful word cure becomes reality, we will always be CHD warriors, not survivors. Have a great day.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Nicole and David can be heard every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories. But if you'd like to continue today's discussion, please join us right after the program in the HUG podcast chat room on Pal Talk.